So for today, we're going to focus on adding more details and putting in a little bit more of some lights and understanding kind of how these branches are going to work. The key is, and again, as you can see, I've added a little bit more to mine just to start to show you the definition that we're talking about. But the key is that when a branch moves, you need to make sure that you're moving your lines with it. So it's not always just staying perfectly straight, perfectly rigid. Also notice that I haven't outlined anything. There's no hard outlines with my work, so hopefully you haven't done that. And so we're going to continue adding in. So today's going to be focusing on adding more to our branches, adding in more values that you can see. So one of the things that I started to do just naturally as I was looking and working on this is I started to add in more lines for areas that I wanted to be darker. Excuse me. And so I started to add a lot more line down in here to make this side appear darker, and I did the same thing a little bit over here. However, as I'm looking at this, I want to come in and I want to make this darker. So even though I have some lines, again, if you need to, nice thing is just by continuing your lines and adding some continuous ones, you can obviously continue to encourage your values to change a little bit. So just by doing that, again, you can see that definition there is already starting to pop. I'm also thinking about the bottom of the tree and those roots, right, and how that would also be dark right at the bottom underneath, and how to the top part of that root it would be lighter. So I'm also adding in a little bit more line, a continuous line under there as well, to kind of showcase that. And again, that's going to allow my tree to begin to look even more three-dimensional than it was. So as I continue, one of the things I want to start to do is this side of the top of the tree needs to be darker because that's what I have been doing. So I'm going to add more line to that side, and again, I'm just adding those continuous lines in, and sometimes they end up following the same line, sometimes they're creating their own, but the key is I'm not just kind of coloring that in and scribbling. I'm trying to stay focused with the lines that I'm making and making sure that I kind of, again, keep it consistent. So I'm also thinking about fading that out then too. So that's dark right there, and then how do I get that to fade would be my next question to myself. So I noticed that a little bit right there. It needed to be darker as well, and then right under here needs to be darker too. So I'm looking at values, I'm looking at adding things in like that. So let's talk about branches. So again, the tree branch itself is going to follow, the bark is going to follow the line of the branch. So instead of going up and down with this one, it's going to start to go to the side. So I'm actually going to come in at first, and because there's a little bit of a knot right here, I'm going to start that, but then as I add in this, I'm going to work my lines in a little bit differently here. And I really love drawing the ends of trees, like the branches. So one of the things that you can do if you're trying to add in branches like so is keep it loose. Do not try to control it super tight. So let your lines be super loose in that sense. So again, hopefully you can see how that looks. And that's right there what I have. Now, in order for that to really stick out right here, I think I'm going to shade and add some, I can't really shade with a marker, but I can add in a little bit of some darker values just along the outside of that tree branch where it's growing off, and that will hopefully allow my branch to stick out just a little bit more, like you can see there. So as I work with my branches that are up higher, same concept. I'm going to apply, I'm going to actually turn my paper a little bit because I think it'll be easier for me to work with, and I'm going to work with that continuous line, adding that in. And again, I like to just add it kind of large at first, kind of wide, and then I can always come back in and add the details where I need to. So that looks a little weird, right? If you see that, it doesn't really look too much like a tree branch. So now, how can I take that and how can I develop it into looking a little bit more like a tree? Well, first off, I'm going to shadow this bottom side. So I'm going to add in a little bit more line, as I've been doing. And so by layering over more, getting a little bit tighter with my lines, I'll be able to make this appear a little bit more like it's shadowed and like it's growing over top. And then I can make this one right here that's growing off the bottom. Once again, doing the same thing. I didn't do a very good job with this one, that's for sure. And in order, maybe what I might try to do too here is add in something else. I'm not positive. But again, there's the idea. So I'm going to continue to think about this one right here, this large trunk, part of the trunk coming up, and I'm going to add in, I think I'm going to have it be shadowed on this side because I think that would make more sense to me. So again, I'm going to continue to work in that continuous line, just adding in more of it. Smaller lines, more layers with a marker and or with pen will show the difference. Can't press harder with a marker. It's kind of always will come out the way however I press with it. But again, now that starts to create that value, and I'm going to do the same thing along here. And again, this branch is curving, so as I'm working on making sure that I'm curving my lines along with it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here as well. As you add in these layers, again, it's going to be super important that you stay consistent and try to keep your lines following and doing what you've been doing and not just trying to go quickly right over top of it all. And again, you can start to see how that will then all appear to work and get in a darker value. So now work a little bit more there. And then the other thing that you can do also is, so branches, I think we've kind of figured that out, but it's these knots in the tree, right? So again, same thing. So instead of actually trying to go with crazy lines, I'm going to focus with almost like more of an implied line now. And an implied line, I'm going to focus on doing more. Think about the knots of a tree when you've seen a piece of wood. So at times I'm going to have some of that continuous line. At other times I'm going to have a little bit more of what I like to call an implied line. And the implied line just simply looks at a knot, but then it kind of creates its own version of it. So again, you can see kind of there. So now I've kind of lost those, and again, because I've added lines there, I need to make the areas around it that I had it sticking out of a little bit darker. So now I'm going to continue adding in a little bit more of my continuous line so I can show that shadow where that was at, coming off of it. And again, the hardest part is honestly learning how to control a marker and use that to your benefit. I'm not saying I'm the greatest at it, because even I've kind of messed up. So again, you can start to see though how just by adding a little bit more dark, I'm able to see some of those. But again, with the Sharpie, it is a little tricky to do those knots. So, but again, just try your best and see what you can come up with. But again, having some of those lines in there just a little bit will be enough and all you need. And then by adding in the shadows surrounding it with those continuous lines may help just kind of showcase where those are in your work. So again, that's what you're going to be focusing on for today.